Alright. I reconnected teams. First and foremost, this.
Sleep and hair loss supplements are selling too fast. We'll probably need another restock soon. Really hope the office workers in Heathrow stop losing hair from overworking. Maybe I could stop working overtime too.
The last part is probably the truth.
And that's the beginning of my NT day today. God. The hub updates way too quickly. Often. Okay, so Aurelia next. One, right? To increase the second multiplier. No new benefits. Yeah, last case. Oh, 0, 0. Spend fund once. Okay, and the second one should be my perception of the quest. I currently watched the 2.7 questline. First of all, Cecilia is nice. And the second one is seriously Ramiel and Ramiel. And Ramuel. What the hell? Yes, Ramiel apparently had her name with just a couple letters off, and that is enough to trick fucking everyone. Ridiculous. Ramuel is a really nice boss. I liked him as an antagonist. Like, that was really he drove this story with his actions. It was really fucking nice. What else? What else? What else? Indeed, the way that, interestingly enough, it was the way that the story went. It I didn't realize it at the time, but I was quite vindicated in the way that the stereo went, because once again our dear fucking proxy trusted way too fucking much someone they just met, and that just saying way too much for a person that we don't really know much about. And turns out she kind of betrayed us, but not really, because she didn't state that she would respect our choice of item. Ramiel. Well, honestly, considering I don't know what happened in 2.6, I only know that the consequence is that we have to go into the Hollow instead of, you know, being armchair proxy, as our sibling put it. I think that was it. Like, hey, as soon as we fix your eyes, you're going to be an armchair proxy once again. So the story goes, at least the story acknowledges that this is kind of a better option. It's a safer option. It's more, you know, it's an option that makes us, that gives us advantage compared to other proxies. Like, for example, compared to the good old tentacle lady. You know who. Yeah, so Привет, Иван. What the fuck? I completely forgot. What are the tentacle ladies called? So that's my current thought process on it.
I'm ready.
It really feels weird that the game is like, the game moved away from TV mode and has been moving away, and like completely isn't there anymore, because it has like, hey, you can claim the rewards from it without playing the mode. And hey, you have a limited amount of it, please go spend it, but I can't spend it because I already claimed all the rewards and I enjoyed it really much and wallet. And I want more content like that. I also want a story mode that focuses on CC. Well, not story mode, but story content. For personal storyline. For personal story quest. I want it. She is really nice, so the voice actress worked really fucking great. Great fucking job, and the animators worked amazingly, and I want to give her a custom that has you know outfit that fits PubSec, like a full-on PubSec uniform, like Yuan uniform for our favorite snake, Thyron. Yeah. Jado might also want PubSec outfit, though not necessarily. Her standard costume is still the best one.
It's my turn now.
Come on, I see you. You're not willing to attack. Wow. It's your loss. Can you just group up? I want to... Yeah, here we go. Alright, let's...
Order. The store's overloaded with orders. Got it. This one is a
tomorrow I'll watch 2.8 main quest. Well, actually, I've already started watching it. I specifically how our dear Astraeo's voice actress completes it. She is a treasure. She's really cute. She's very expressive. Makes it really fun, way more fun than just watching it. Oh yeah, I forgot I wanted to. Let's crash it a couple of times. Где-то. The physics is trash. I should... With how fast I went and how sharply I stopped, the car should have been pushed away. I really hate lazy physics. Like, no. Arcade physics are nice and good and all, but like... Don't make physics lazy. I still want to play my Half-Life with Havoc physics and all of that. Can Havoc be optimized for mobile phones? It's really weird that nowadays physics just doesn't seem like a selling point anymore. There's not much Fusrada anymore. At least not in the games I play. And they don't need to break into really small pieces. You don't really need lots of cheese wheels. Slow everything down. But still.
What a lovely flower. Who sent this?
Oh, I'm curious.
Yeah. Okay. 3 out of 3. We really should fix it. But first this. I guess. What? Come on!
Time for the professionals to exclusive delivery. Please sign here. Stay back.
There we go. I think in... Oh, come on.
My turn now. Is that it? Get out! Don't get dragged in! You're stuck here with me! Shift change. Don't make me clean up for too long.
Currently I have 28. Next one
Let's fight.
is expected to be 36.
Pretty lively here. Stay back. Time for the professionals to take over. All right. Shift change. Don't make me.
I will see you through.
Pretty lively here.
Trust me.
Shift change. Don't make me clean up for too long. Come on, let's fight. My turn now.
12, 16, 6. Let's teleport here. And just do everything.
More critical but vague view of the military, and Transformers 1 is the Communist Manifesto. Now, what does Project Hail Mary have to say about the existence of aliens? What roadblocks exist when engaging with someone like Rocky? Well, not that many. I think what's so refreshing about Project Hail Mary is the treatment of Rocky. He's not an intimidating force, and he is not a stupid, immature caricature. Rocky is never treated like a threat that needs to be taken out. At worst, Grace is concerned that the message that Rocky is sending him is a bomb.
It could be a message. Could be a bomb. Is it a bomb?
But even in that scenario,
It could be a message. Could be a bomb. Is it a bomb?
Grace never asks for any space blasters or weaponry.
Shields up!
There are no shields on
Taking
board
a
the
Why
shortcut
not?
down.
The only time we see him attack Rocky is again when he's scared. And then he just immediately apologizes.
No, I'm sorry. You scared me when you went...
And the question about Rocky's motives is never construed as him lying or having ulterior motives, because why would he? He's in the same predicament that Grace is in, and it's just beneficial for them to get along. So much so that they...
All these orders. The store's overloaded with orders. Got it. This one is a large...
formed this brotherly connection to each other. While watching the movie, I buckled my seat just to prepare myself for the scene where it revealed that one of them was lying to each other, and now there's distrust amongst them for the next 30 minutes. But that never came. Instead, what I got was this scene where Ryland Grace tells Rocky the nature of him being there and how he is ultimately going to die. And it hit me like a truck.
I thought you made peace. Question?
I didn't mean any of that.
What the fuck is that? This is so bullshit. What the fuck? Who made it like that? This is so ridiculous. Could have moved it here, you know? Wait, out there... Is it the bus line or is it parking?
That's just something you say.
This scene makes me want to smoke a cigarette. It's too much for me. The connection that they have formed with each other through science has been so honest that when Rocky realizes Grace was keeping something from him, you can almost feel the betrayal in his voice.
Grace die? Question?
Yeah, once we're done, I'm gonna die.
The relationship has been built on so much trust and openness thus far that Rocky was shocked to hear that Grace didn't think that his death was gonna be a big deal. And when Grace finally accepts the fuel to go home, he realizes that he's formed a bond that he could never find on Earth, realizing that he's found someone that would sacrifice so much for him because he values him as a person. This, combined with Rocky telling Grace that he's brave, all culminates in Grace having to accept the thing that he refused to do on Earth. He does rise to the occasion. He does succeed. And it's because of Rocky. Project Hail Mary answers the man lost in space trope by proving it wrong. No, Men actually don't exist without their context. We do not have meaning if there is nothing. Our meaning and our worth is based on the people and values we have around us. The reason we exist is because of our context. No, Ryan Grace could not complete the mission by his own. He needs connection. More practically, Grace could not physically complete the mission without Rocky's ingenuity, and Rocky could not complete the mission without Grace's science experience. Project Hail Mary shows us that we as humans value our connection, for better or worse, to one another, and that connection can come from anywhere, whether it's a government agent tasked with babysitting you, or an alien rock that lives in a ball. It also tells us
New machine just got here and a player already smashed it trying to clear a level. At least they paid for the damage. This time it's got a custom titanium casing. No way she dents it with one punch again. Right?
Since when is breaking machines part of the gameplay?
how much we can learn from each other when those bonds are pushed to their limits. When the leak bursts in the ship and starts spinning, Rocky breaks out of his pod and turns the centrifuge on. He could have gone back in his pod and saved himself, but he decided to drag Grace through the ship, sacrificing himself to the environment that was eating him alive. I think the part that breaks me is when Rocky is screaming, those are spoken words. He is speaking Iridian there. But Grace did not think to translate those words because he never thought that his new friend would be in so much pain. I need a cigarette, man. This all culminates at the end of the movie when Grace finally makes the sacrifice play that the movie has been building up for the entire time. The Talmiba has gone through the Xenonite and is headed towards the astrophage. And he soon comes to the conclusion that Rocky will not only experience the same thing, but will not be able to find the leak because the leak is the ship itself. Grace, knowing this, finally decides to send the Beatles back home and go save his friend, even if it means that he might lose his own life doing so. There are so many other concepts and themes in this movie that are worth talking about, like astrophage and how it represents nature being this violent, existential force, but is also the most beautiful thing we've ever seen or experienced. I've seen a lot of people talk about how Ryland Grace resembles a part of the asexual condition, where they feel both ousted from traditional communities and even pride communities, leading to this hyper-isolationism they experience. There's a lot in this movie, and when someone says that a movie is successful
Vehicle damage reduction. Okay. Oh, that's actually awful, isn't it? Well, I mean, I'm just gonna go on the highway and smash it either way.
because it's just pure entertainment, I am both offended and sorry for them. I feel bad for these types of people who reject the idea of engaging with a piece of media beyond face value. It's a boring existence. And if you are one of these people watching this video, please consider digging deeper or doing anything at all, honestly. Maybe the curtains aren't just blue. Maybe Jesus wept for an amazing reason. And maybe art isn't just there to look cool. I'm Andrew, art is political. Thank you to the patrons and members.
All these orders, when will it end? The store's overloaded with orders and we're short-scutted. This one is a common
Okay, looks like it's not changing, I think, here. Alright, that's fine.
And good night.
Heath Ledger's turn as the Joker in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight is one of the most celebrated and chilling villain performances of the new century, and yet, somewhat paradoxically, it is also directly responsible for inspiring some of the worst villain performances of the last 2 decades. The double-edged sword of creating something genuinely iconic is that your iconic creation will inevitably be ripped off by less talented, less creative people and become somewhat of a joke. What's interesting is that Heath Ledger's Joker has become shorthand in the pop cultural sphere for someone who is deliberately edgy and fake deep, and yet the performance itself is still universally celebrated. The actual performance in The Dark Knight is still considered chilling and affecting and iconic, and yet the performance's earnest imitators have become such a widespread target of mockery that this off-brand recreation of this version of the Joker has arguably had an equal or greater cultural impact. When someone says, "I'm the Joker, baby," you don't think about the comic book version of the Joker, or the Batman the Animated Series version of the Joker, or the Jack Nicholson version of the Joker. You think of the Heath Ledger Joker, but not actually the Heath Ledger Joker as played by Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, but the meme version that is based on his relentless imitators. It's more of a mockery of Joker fans and Joker cosplayers and people who posted unironic, edgy memes starring the Joker on Facebook back in the 2010s than it is a mockery of Heath Ledger's Joker himself. And yet one did directly inspire the other. But outside of inspiring a lot of edgy memes and a lot of ironic memes based on those edgy memes, Heath Ledger's Joker also inspired, to varying degrees, other actual villain performances in film and television. There were, of course, the subsequent versions of the Joker performed by Jared Leto and Joaquin Phoenix, which pulled a lot of inspiration from Heath's specific interpretation of the character. There were other adaptations of comic book supervillains that contained a lot of Joker DNA, like Anarchy or both Tricksters on the CW superhero shows, but it also heavily influenced live-action interpretations of non-comic book supervillains, like Sherlock's version of Moriarty. Sometimes the inspiration is very subtle, and sometimes the villain is just doing a Heath Ledger impression, but his influence is undeniable. Heath Ledger's interpretation of the Joker ushered in an era of crazy villains, whose performances focused less on grandiose gestures and more on
What kind of delivery is this? 1 star. I'm not paying a cent.
Definitely a problem customer.
Your service sucks. I'm filing a complaint.
Sorry for the poor experience.
Now that's more like it. Did you just roll your eyes at me? Don't think this is over. I'm calling your company. You're done.
Less trouble is better. Let's end this quickly. It's just a small issue. Let's settle this privately.
Now that's better. We play by the rules, and you give me a discount. Fine. Whatever. Just remember this next time.
Honestly, more annoying than an anomaly.
subtle, creepy mannerisms. Ledger's performance was carried by a weird walk with a weird gait and odd, jerky motions, and was punctuated by darting eyes and tongue flicks and weird little facial tics. And while his exact choices wouldn't necessarily carry over into other performances, these broad elements would become incredibly popular in other actors' interpretations of their villain roles.
Greetings. Welcome to the witch's house. Your path ahead is...
Yeah, okay.
Leto and Joaquin Phoenix's subsequent turns as the Joker are markedly different interpretations, but their heavy focus on weird mannerisms and facial tics shows that they are still following the framework of Heath Ledger's performance. So the question is, if all of these villain performances are directly or indirectly inspired by what is undeniably one of the greatest villain performances of the last 2.5 decades, why are most of them bad? Why is Heath Ledger's Joker still so effective and scary almost 20 years later, while his imitators are, for lack of a better word, cringe? Well, the blunt and simple answer is that Heath Ledger was just a much better actor than most of those other guys, but there's more to it than that. I think what makes something read to us as cringe is the perception of inauthenticity. Now, sometimes genuine emotional earnestness can be cringe, but a lot of the time, what makes us recoil in skin-crawling disgust is the perception that something is inauthentic, that someone is trying to deliberately elicit an emotional reaction from us artificially. And so what can make a performance cringe instead of scary is a lack of proper motivation. For example, something that I've almost always found to be cringy is try not to laugh contests. You know, the moment I feel like someone is trying to get a laugh out of me, nothing they do is funny. So I think in like the 3rd season of Game Changer, they did this like Survivor parody where all the comedians were sort of competing on a version of Survivor. And one of the games they played is a try not to laugh contest. And for me, it was the least entertaining part of the episode. Comedy, especially improv comedy, is funny because it's spontaneous, it's unexpected. But watching comedians deliberately try to make each other laugh had this unnatural desperation to it. Brennan Lee Mulligan is someone that I find to be effortlessly funny most of the time. And yet I didn't find anything he did during that game even remotely funny because I knew he was trying to make me laugh. Nothing anybody did during that game was funny to me because it felt too deliberate, except for Lou saying, "Please let me win" at the end. That was actually hilarious. And it was hilarious because it was genuinely unexpected and it read as earnest. What makes Heath Ledger's Joker effective, aside from Heath Ledger being a good actor, working with a good script, and being in a good movie, is that everything he does is motivated. One thing that is really interesting about Heath Ledger's Joker is that in every scene he's in, he is doing something. He is always on the move. He is rushing from point A to point B. And all of his little tics and mannerisms and his funny walk and his weird gestures are motivated by that movement from A to B. You don't get the sense that he's just doing the gestures and the
These orders. The store's overloaded with orders. Got it. Express cargo.
tics for the sake of doing the gestures and the tics. He always has a purpose in whatever scene he's in beyond just be scary. Heath Ledger's off-putting, creepy mannerisms don't feel like an affectation that he's performing to scare you. They feel like his genuine mannerisms. They're an afterthought. He's not in the scene to lick his lips and gesticulate wildly. He's in the scene to play Russian roulette with Harvey Dent or take Rachel Dawes hostage or blow up a hospital or, do something else. The mannerisms are the way he's doing that. Everything he's doing is motivated. He always has something to do in the scene that he's in. Christopher Nolan gets a lot of deserved flack and a lot of deserved praise, but one thing that he is really good at as a director is showing up late and getting out early. Christopher Nolan movies move along at a very brisk pace. His scenes almost never overstay their welcome, and his version of the Joker never overstays his welcome. Heath Ledger's Joker isn't in that many scenes of The Dark Knight because he's only in a scene if he has something to do, and once he's done the thing he's there to do, he leaves. The biggest problem with most of the performances inspired by Heath Ledger's Joker is that the actors don't have anything to do most of the time. They're just vamping. So vamping is an old vaudeville theater term. It refers to when something would go wrong during a show and the actors or musicians would have to improvise to fill up time and keep the audience entertained while people backstage fixed whatever the problem was. It's etymologically unrelated to vampires. It actually refers to the vamp, which is a piece of a shoe that is used to cover up a seam. Anyway, part of the reason that Jared Leto's performance as the Joker in Suicide Squad is cringe, aside from the smiley hand tattoo and the lack of eyebrows and it being Jared Leto, is that in most of his scenes he doesn't have anything to do. He's doing the creepy mannerisms, he's doing the voice, he's doing the facial tics, he's doing the gesticulating, but he's not doing it during anything. He's kind of just getting in front of the camera and going, "Ah, ooh, look, I'm scary." And the thing is, fear and intimidation work the same way as comedy. If you get the sense that someone is trying to scare you, it stops being scary. I think Gen Z's penchant for calling everything cringe is a bit overblown, but there is a genuine level of recognizing inauthenticity there. Another bit of Gen Z slang, which let's face it is probably just stolen from black people, is aura farming, which refers to when a character or real person is deliberately doing something just to look cool. I think it's interesting that a lot of current online culture is based around the recognition that a lot of media is trying to deliberately elicit a certain reaction from us, and how inauthentic and deserving of mockery it feels when they don't pull it off well. Now, Jared Leto is Jared Leto, but Joaquin Phoenix is actually a really good actor. I loved him in You Were Never Really Here, but his Joker has a lot of the same problems. His performance itself isn't bad. He's not doing bad acting. He's not necessarily making bad choices. The biggest issue with his Joker is that, first of all, he's got so much screen time to fill, and second of all, he doesn't really have anything to do. A lot of his scenes, specifically his scenes once he's transformed into the Joker and is no longer Arthur Fleck, feel like the director stuck him in front of the camera and told him to be creepy. And again, Joaquin Phoenix is a good actor. He's turning in as good of a performance as he can, but the issue is, for most of the movie, he really is just vamping. Very little of his performance feels motivated. It doesn't feel like his character has a clear goal in most of the scenes he's in. His motivation is just
What's with the rush? You seriously have to send this to the office? Guy again. Buying expensive crap and spiky flowers that can't even sit on a desk. And why the express delivery? Why not just give it to me after work? Ugh, idiot.
She's angry. She doesn't look as tired now.
be scary. And again, he is doing his best, but without a clear motivation, the deliberateness of his creepiness becomes obvious and the performance becomes cringe. Motivation is what separates bold and earnest from embarrassing and cringy. Speaking of Gen Z, one of the things they love to mock is what they perceive as millennial humor, and one of the hallmarks of millennial humor is essentially doing a Jim Carrey impression. You know, punctuating your jokes or your performance with big, exaggerated faces. I think this one is kind of a favorite. This hurts my jaw. Like, the edge of my jaw is banging into my neck bone. It's weird. I mean, there's obviously other comedians that are famous for their exaggerated facial expressions, but Jim Carrey feels like the obvious cultural touchstone for the millennial generation. So I feel pretty confident calling this specific style of millennial humor Jim Carrey impressions. However, just like Heath Ledger still being scary, Jim Carrey is still funny. I mean, some of his jokes haven't aged too well, but looking back at his old movies, you wouldn't call his performance cringe. And yet his millennial imitators, depending on your taste, aren't funny. And once again, the reason is motivation. Jim Carrey's facial expressions are funny in the same way that Heath Ledger's facial tics and mannerisms are creepy because they're motivated. Carrey is not just making a goofy face while lip-syncing a TikTok audio for the sake of making a goofy face, in the same way that Heath Ledger is not just doing creepy mannerisms for the sake of doing creepy mannerisms. Jim Carrey is trying to make you laugh in the same way that Heath Ledger is trying to creep you out, but the character isn't trying to make you laugh. He's trying to get from point A to point B, and he's just being goofy while he's doing it, in the same way that Heath Ledger's Joker is just trying to get from point A to point B and being creepy while he's doing it. There's a specific genre of fake behind-the-scenes facts where people will claim that an iconic aspect of a famous movie was accidental or improvised. Obviously, there are a few things in certain movies that are genuinely improvised, but most of them aren't. And I would actually argue that the widespread popularity and prevalence of this kind of fake fun fact is the result of anti-intellectualism. Oh, those nerd screenwriters and Tisch graduate actors couldn't have come up with something this authentic deliberately desperately, it has to be real. But I do think it's a testament to the authenticity of Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker that so many aspects of his performance have fake fun facts about them being improvised or accidental. No, that bit in the hospital scene where there's a delay before the big explosion and the Joker fiddles with the detonator before the bombs go off was not the result of an accident. Both the delay and the bit with the detonator was scripted, and it's actually pretty insulting to the pyrotechnics team to imply that they didn't do their jobs properly when the safety of everyone on set relies on them doing their jobs properly. But the reason that fake fun fact is believable, and the reason it felt like that moment was improvised, is because Heath Ledger was, acting. Because he's a good actor. He made it seem like he didn't expect the explosions to stop because he was acting. That's how a performance works. The popularity of Judd Apatow movies, which are at least partially improvised, has kind of lionized the idea of actors doing improvisation. Popularity of Judd Apatow movies, which are at least partially improvised, has kind of lionized the idea of actors doing improvisation. It's kind of a similar thing to actors saying they did their own stunts or directors saying that there wasn't any CGI in their movie. You're kind of claiming that something is authentic when it isn't. And I think that lionization has led to a lot of really bad improv. From actors who aren't very good at it. In a lot of recent movies, mostly comedies, but other genres as well, there are a lot of performances that feel like the director just pointed the camera at the actor and said, all right, do something funny, do something scary, do something that make us care. But ironically, part of the reason that Heath Ledger's Joker feels so authentic is that it is scripted. Heath Ledger had a very tight script to hang his performance off of. He was never just left out to dry. He wasn't just a dog chasing cars. He was never just making it up as he went along. He always had something to do. Chris Nolan didn't just point a camera at him and say, okay, be scary. The interesting thing about the Joker and villains like him is that there isn't really a lot of substance to him. He doesn't really have a backstory. He doesn't have much in the way of internality. The movie treats him like a, chaotic force force of nature, and so it's very important for the authenticity and believability of the performance and the movie that he never stops moving. The moment you get a scene where he has nothing to do, the moment you have too much time to think about him and analyze him, the whole thing kind of falls apart. So he has to keep moving. He has to keep swimming. He's almost always moving, like literally. Go back and watch the movie. He's never sitting still. The Joker's imitators stand still for too long. They're plopped in front of the camera and told to vamp. And there's time for the mystique to fall apart. You, the audience, start going, oh, this is just some guy making weird faces. That's not scary. You know, there's a lot of scenes where Bruce Wayne is standing stoically or introspecting or staring at his Batman mask or thinking, but the Joker is always moving, and Wally Pfister's camera is also almost always moving when it's on him. We're not given enough time for it to become cringe. He doesn't overstay his welcome long enough for us to stop taking him seriously. Creepiness comes from a lack of understanding. Things are scary when they pose a direct threat, right? A big guy running at you with an axe is scary, but something is creepy when we can't figure it out. And Chris Nolan and John Nolan and Wally Pfister and Heath Ledger maintain the Joker's creepiness by never giving us enough time to stop and figure him out. There's never a moment where it feels like he's trying to get a reaction out of us. He's always just trying to get from A to B, and we're too busy worrying about what he's gonna do next to question the authenticity of his mannerisms. I guess the takeaway from all this is to give your villains stuff to do, and in fact just give your characters stuff to do. Character is revealed by the things people do and the way that they do them, and very little is revealed to us by the way that someone stands in an empty room and does nothing. Anyway, if you like this video, you can like it and subscribe and send it to your friends and hit the bell icon and leave a comment and send me a pint of your blood. And you can also subscribe to my Patreon, where for $1 you can see these scripted, more intensive video essays early, and for $5 you can vote on new video essay topics and get shouted out at the end of the video. And you can also see some other stuff occasionally. Anyway, becoming a supporter helps support all of this. So yeah. Anyway, goodbye.
No matter what your politics are, it feels like Americans can agree on one thing these days. Everything we love is getting worse. From fashion to food, sports, it seems like things just aren't as good as they were growing up. And now this enshittification is coming for one of America's great pastimes, bowling.
Straight down the middle. No hook, no spin, no fuss.
Woo! I'm slamming him tonight. You guys are dead in the water.
In the 90s, a family could spend an entire Saturday night bowling for only $35. Whether it was a birthday party, a date night, or
What should we do today? Me? I'm here. What do you... Hey, the wind... Hold on. Let me... me? I'm here.
What was I trying to do? Yes. You. How much more? That's 6. I don't need to ruin everything. I can just go ahead and do it.
even a competitive league, bowling was one of the few activities that worked for all Americans. Singles, couples, men, women, rich, poor, old, young, they all bowled. I tallied up one night at my closest bowling alley and I was shocked. And despite spending more we're getting a worse experience.
You notice the price hikes, it's insane.
Price has been always going up. We're talking about inflation.
The corporation, they just didn't care about a lot of little things.
They know nothing about bowling.
This is the story of the little guys who are trying to save bowling and the Wall Street outsiders who are changing it.
I don't think anyone takes bowling seriously. Why would you?
So how do guys like that decide who gets to bowl and who gets left in the gutter?
In order to find out, we're going bowling. I'm here in Los Angeles at my closest bowling center, a Lucky Strike, and there's a good chance that your closest bowling center is also a Lucky Strike. This facility behind me actually opened in 1960 as
Can we not?
the AMF Bowling Center, and in 2025 was rebranded as Lucky Strike. I'm taking a few friends of mine who actually bowl to this Lucky Strike for the full Friday night experience.
Lucky Strike has just opened a new bowling alley.
Wauwatosa Bowling Alley has a new look and a new name after 60 years.
Lucky Strike in Ala Moana Center opens tomorrow.
That's not the traditional looking bowling alley.
Despite the name, there's a lot more than just bowling going on there.
It's safe to say this does not look like the bowling we grew up with.
And when you visit an independent lane, the differences are pretty shocking.
Bowling is a big part of my life. I've been in bowling since literally birth. My parents met bowling. My dad was working at the bowling center. My mom was actually going in the back while she was pregnant with me, working on the machine. So it's something I was born to do, I guess. The bowling boom really happened, really after World War II, I'm going to say. And that's where the commercialization started going in, where you start going away from the 8 and 16 lane centers to the large 32, 48, 60 lane centers.
During its peak in the mid-60s, there were over 12,000 bowling centers in America. Some bowling centers even offered daycare services to get young families involved. At its peak, nearly 10 million Americans were league bowlers. They showed up every week and accounted for the majority of sales at a bowling center.
To get the most possible enjoyment out of your bowling, by all means join a team and bowl in a league. Nothing can top the excitement and satisfaction of competing in team play.
Pro bowling even had 12 million weekly viewers on Saturday afternoons, outdrawing college football.
Every size, age, kind, breed, and class from all walks of life. Every type imaginable. They make the game our country's most popular participating sport.
Today, there are less than 3,200 bowling centers in America. Some of this decline mirrors broader cultural shifts, the rise of home entertainment.
You're a lifesaver. You got here just in time or I'd have missed my train. My wife sent you... Wait.
Come on.
And the general collapse of third places in American life.
With property values being what they are, you see the size of lot that this center's on. They just sell it for the dirt and don't really think of it as this is a community place for your kids to have a place to hang out. That is the biggest enemy to bowling, especially in Southern California.
As real estate values skyrocket, many independent alleys just couldn't survive.
So they changed who bowling was for.
In 1998, Tom Shannon bought the original Bullmore lanes in New York City and transformed them into a nightclub atmosphere.
The Bullmore CEO saw two different versions of America in a bowling alley. The blue-collared regulars who kept the lights on, and the upscale newcomers who'd pay 5 times more for the same lane.
In New York or Orange County, California, it's ironic because you take people who rarely do the sport, right? Think of it as this old man's league activity, and you make it relevant for them, and they love it. I mean, I don't think anyone takes bowling seriously. Why would you?
Tom Shannon didn't take bowling seriously, but for 15 years, the model worked in places like LA and New York, where bowling felt a little bit ironic. But then there was an opportunity to redefine the entire sport. In 2013, AMF Bowling, once the largest bowling chain in the world, filed for bankruptcy. All 270 locations were suddenly available. Shannon bought them all.
The following year, the 150-year-old Brunswick Corporation sold its 85 centers to Bullmore.
Lucky Strike, formerly known as Bolero, had a CEO that looked out and saw what he said was a rich opportunity.
There are 3,500, give or take, independent bowling centers in this country, and so it's just a tremendous long-term opportunity for us to continue to consolidate.
He set out a plan to slowly but surely roll up basically the entire industry and got some funding from a bunch of private equity guys on Wall Street to do just that.
We've got 3,500 different independent bowling alley operators in the United States, representing an incredible consolidation opportunity for Bolero.
And inside those centers, things begin to change quickly.
I worked there when it was AMF, and then when they moved it to Bolero, that's when you notice a lot of the change. It's a big difference. Like, let's do what we can to get the leagues out and what we can to make it more like a party.
Between 2013 and 2015, the company allegedly fired 287 managers. By 2017, more than 50 former employees had filed age discrimination complaints. The people running these centers had no connection to the sport, and bowlers noticed. On the night we filmed at the independent Alhambra Valley Bowl, we spoke with league bowlers who used to bowl at Bolero centers.
When they got wind that we might move,
Inventory's done. Count checks out. Just even weirder than I expected. You really think people are gonna buy these? I don't get fashion anymore. So even the staff is confused.
It was just kind of an email saying, all right, see ya. At Bolero, we just didn't feel appreciation for our league, for the guaranteed money that we pay every week.
From lane operations to cleanliness, many bowlers started to notice a decline in the overall experience, all while the prices rose.
You get someone who's fresh out of their MBA and says, all right, turn this place around. And they look at numbers, say, oh, well, we're not charging enough. We need to make more here. Well, we make a lot on Saturday night, so we should just do that every day.
We can't afford to charge bowlers, $35 in league fees every week. That's what, $140 a month? It's insane.
When I think of going bowling, whether it's with friends or family, I'm not trying to break the bank to do it, and it felt like you were doing that there.
They just treat it like they just want every dollar out of you when you're there. That's what makes you kind of feel like you're just a walking wallet.
And it's not just league bowlers. Thanks to their dynamic pricing, we really are walking wallets.
Our goal is to fill the centers on the weekends at the highest price we can, and ultimately dynamic pricing allows you to do that.
For 2 hours, it was $49 a person, plus the $7 for shoe rentals. That's $56 per person, and we haven't even opened the menu yet.
They pushed us away with the cost, not just for bowling, but for, the food and drink.
Gotta start with the dunk tank.
Dunk tanks. A bottle of beer was like $10 there. A pitcher of beer was like $37. It was just going crazy.
Bucket of beer, $40. Not great. There's no discount there. We could have just ordered them individually.
A nacho avalanche, $19.99. Get out of town. And that doesn't even come with meat. $25 for nachos, for chicken.
There is no real cheese on this. Give me real cheese. They're bad.
I just feel like if food or like concessions are going to be theme park expensive, as long as it's also really tasty, I'm totally cool with it. But if you're getting gouged and it's not very good, it's just kind of like a double whammy.
The corporate centers are going to do what corporate things do, and this is not unique to bowling, but they're making it work by shifting more to entertainment as opposed to the sport.
They wanted just the party atmosphere.
One thing I will say is that this is like stimulation overload, super loud. There's a lot going on. This is not a relaxing social experience whatsoever.
I've always wanted to bowl and watch Family Guy at the same time.
They don't really know a lot about the sport itself. They just turn the lanes on and they don't really care about what's happening.
You got to know about bowling. So, get out there, bowl some games, talk to the league bowlers. There, they don't do that. It's like watch a 30-minute training video and you're out to the sharks. That's it.
But in all my conversations, there was one thing that fired bowlers up the most.
The thing that we really hate about Lucky Strike and why we try not to come here too often is we hate the strings and the pins. You don't get that satisfying crash when you bowl on these string pins.
When they brought the string pins, our league, we lost a lot of teams, lost a lot of bowlers because of that, because they were turned off.
You're taking away the fun of the game.
And it's not just about aesthetics. String pins change the physics of the game.
The data shows that strike percentages are lower in all entry angles.
A 2021 USBC study revealed that strings had a 10% decrease in strikes.
A delay of play has been initiated. I think the wires are supposed to make it more consistent, but it's only our second frame, already an issue. I'm gonna have to head over to the desk and get somebody because nobody's coming over.
The house is always dirty. The bathrooms were gross, crumbs and dust.
There's a lot of things you don't have to do when you're just catering to that open play crowd, and they'll pay 3 or 4 times the rate that the league bowler would pay.
Okay, let's tally up our bill.
Ah, such a fresh batch. Thanks to you, today's special is gonna fly off the menu. Fire up the kitchen. Get 2 runners to unload now. We're opening soon.
It looks delicious. Should I give it a try?
From 2 hours of bowling. The lane and shoe package for 4 people was $223. Add just 1 bucket of beer and some under cheese nachos, and you're looking at about $308 with tax and tip. That's $77 a person. So how does the Lucky Strike model compare to an independent alley like Alhambra Valley Bowl?
We have a happy hour special Monday through Thursday from open to 3 p.m. That is $2 a game, and after that, then it's $5 a game, and on the weekends, it's $6 a game. It is significantly below market. I'd rather have a house full of people paying half price than 3 lanes going and people paying full price. That's just our philosophy. Is the goal for us to take everything that we can from the customers, or is the goal for them to have an experience where they continue to come for 20, 30 years?
But this attitude is becoming increasingly rare in bowling. Wichita, Kansas is one of the strongest bowling markets in the country. When Bolero acquired 3 centers in a single deal in 2022, it controlled 54% of the market. Within a year, prices were reported to triple. 600 league bowlers quit. In Northern Virginia, Bolero acquired 8 locations in a single deal. Their market share went from 34% to 95% overnight. The only competition left controlled just 28 lanes. For bowlers in the region, there was nowhere else to go.
Antitrust is supposed to step in around the 30% of a market level. So in some of these markets, we're seeing more than 3 times the level that's supposed to trip the law.
By 2023, Bolero controlled more than a third of all bowling revenue in America.
Now we have 323 bowling alleys all across the country.
But they didn't just stop at the lanes.
Then they also bought the Professional Bowling Association, which you could think of as more of a vertical relationship.
Who do you think you are? I am!
If Bolero/Lucky Strike controls the PBA, they end up sending all the cool, high-profile PBA events to their bowling alleys, not to rivals. That further weakens the rivals, and now you can roll up even more of them. All of these things together, I think, add up to a pretty damning portrait of what this company has done.
Bolero pretty much buys up every single bowling alley and pushes out all the mom and pops, and it kind of just makes it where you either go to a Bolero or you just don't bowl at all.
Now, bowlers are striking back. In May of 2026, a class action lawsuit was filed against Lucky Strike Entertainment, alleging the company used its market dominance to illegally raise prices and destroy competition.
This lawsuit shines a light on something that we have seen in other sectors. It's private equity on Wall Street finding the relatively few sectors that are still made up of mostly independent local businesses and saying as long as we've got enough money in our pockets, we can buy up this industry. We can control it.
It's not just about Tom Shannon or Lucky Strike. It's about everything getting worse for consumers. And these corporations will continue squeezing until people like these bowlers push back.
It wasn't more than 25 years ago that a family could walk into a bowling alley and spend 30 to 50 bucks for an entire Saturday night. That memory of the sport is fading, only to be replaced with a luxury model that caters to the wealthy. But still, over 60 million Americans visit bowling centers every year, not as ironic nightclubs, but places that build community.
It's like the last bastion of like camaraderie, you know? People hanging out together, having something in common.
Some of our league bowlers have been bowling for like 20, 30 years in this league, you know? It's been around since I think 75. We're proud to keep it going.
Once you get into bowling, it's like a whole big old family, you know what I mean?
Bowling is still for everyone. Bowling has always really just been about community and making connections, and I think that is really what we're missing.
We need more bowling alleys like this without no strings. We need more bowling alleys that bring the love.
Each center has character. Each center has its own feel to it, or it used to. We are Alhambra Valley Bowl, and you'll only get this experience here. You're not going to get this everywhere else.
You made it to the end. Thanks for watching.
I toil over a debunk video for a year because I'm a pathological perfectionist. Meanwhile, what are you doing? Watching Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, one of my faves. A 16-year-old movie about a 25-year-old dating a 17-year-old? He's 22. You're 46! And this is why you'll never amount to anything. Unlike that Kane Pixels. You're wrong, Captain. I'm doing stuff. I'm actually going to be hosting a movie club live stream about Scott Pilgrim for someone else's show. What show? Digital Spaghetti. Digital Spaghetti? That's right. July 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific.
Hey guys, I just saw Christopher Nolan's new movie, The Odyssey, and I gotta say, I'm disappointed. See, I knew that it was gonna be a complete piece of shit when I went in, and sure enough, it was a total friggin' banger. The fact that it's one of the best movies ever made really distracts from the experience of trying to hate it. Now, in case you're out of the loop, this was the most disliked trailer in all of history. I spent months eagerly waiting to dunk on this movie. Now look, some people didn't like the actors, others didn't like the costumes. I, on the other hand, wanted to save the West. And now this movie's woke, but not broke, and it's really fucking cool. It's a disaster.
Right. Please, sir, can I has clue number 1? Now, what I want. Okay, so those things just give seeds. I want this and this and this. And let's just not grow anything else because it's gonna be better this way. Whatever.
Don't get me started on the trans casting. Every time Elliot Page was on screen, all I could think about was, gee whiz, this is a human being with pain and confusion and struggles, just like me. I don't like this. Turns out all these influences really gave me some false hope that I could hate something. Check out this tweet by Elon Musk. Chris Nolan desecrated Homer and groveled on his knees just to meet the woke rules required to win an Oscar. What a worm. So the whole movie, I was just watching and waiting for Homer to be desecrated. You know, guys, I thought this was it. The one thing that I could hate more than anything else. But now I realize there is so little worth hating. I'm gonna go watch Supergirl. Let me know in the comments how much you hate this video.
I will uphold the honor of the Yingling. Do you have any information on the pregnancy? I'll arm wrestle you for her. Seriously, you win. Time to fight.
Engage.
Clean and sharp. Impressive. Exceptional. Keep it up.
Textbook maneuver.
That's cute.
Keep your distance.
A textbook maneuver.
Позавчера, в воскресенье, на стадионе в пригороде Нью-Йорка завершился чемпионат мира по футболу, который шел весь последний месяц. В финале действующий чемпион мира, Аргентина, сошлась с действующим чемпионом Европы, сборной Испании. Забив единственный гол в дополнительное время, испанцы победили, во второй раз став чемпионами мира. Я не вот прям любитель футбола, хотя чемпионаты мира исправно смотрел и этот. Футбол, да и вообще спорт, тема для нашего канала нетипичная, но завершившийся чемпионат оказался настолько планетарно успешным, настолько полным общественно значимых и даже политических событий, что не обсудить его было бы странно. Чего только стоит один тот факт, что чисто спортивные обозреватели могли через запятую с результатами команд и сугубо техническими данными обсуждать, что сегодня сделал Дональд Трамп, президент страны-хозяйки. В общем, поговорим о том, как прошел чемпионат, что там было интересного, и о том, как самый главный мировой спорт реально сближает самые разные культуры. Прежде чем начнем обсуждать чемпионат.
Если тебе будет одиноко, то просто вспомни про свой компьютер, ведь там есть мы. Верные, пиксельные девушки, которые всегда будут рядом. Если тебе будет одиноко, то просто...
also a component of over 600 medicines worldwide, ranging from everyday
Housing suppliers failed to keep up with demand, the gap having been widening ever since the early 2000s. Relatedly, the share of 25 to 34-year-olds living with their parents has been climbing, nearly doubling from 10% in 1983 to 19.1% in 2023, and that was even after a sizable post-COVID decline in young people living at home. The stats are little better across the world, with housing having become one of the defining issues of the last few years, often tied in with broader affordability concerns in the face of rising inflation and stagnant wage growth. The crisis of living space and cost is why 3D printed houses were initially thought to be a bit of a game changer. With development times for traditional housing ever expanding and the costs of doing business increasing, the ability to quickly and cheaply 3D print housing structures held the potential to completely upend the housing market. That could have led to a huge production boom and made prices more affordable for everyone, regardless of whether the house had been traditionally built or 3D printed. That's not, however, how things have worked out in practice. Despite the promise of the technology, there has not been a 3D printed housing boom. You'd have probably noticed that on Zillow. In 2023, there were at best a few dozen 3D printed homes, once you exclude the ones built for show purposes. And although there is no global body keeping track of the exact number of 3D printed homes worldwide, the best estimates we have still peg that number somewhere in the low to mid hundreds. That would barely make a dent in a mid-sized city's housing market, let alone an entire country's. But if building houses using 3D printing technology is faster and cheaper than building them the traditional way, and yeah, it probably is, then why is the technology as a whole failing to meet expectations? Well, to understand that, we first have to understand the process of 3D printing. I'm 3D printing something right now on a little Prusa 3D printer. How does 3D printing... I'm 3D printing something right now on a little Prusa 3D printer. How does 3D printing work? 3D printing is the process of constructing a three-dimensional object using a blueprint in the form of a CAD, computer-assisted design model, or a digital 3D model. The materials, which can include plastics, liquids, and powder grains, are fused together under computer control, usually one layer at a time. This process can
For now, I currently claimed 2 all, I think. Oh, there's a new banner. A new banner that I'm not gonna pull on. In Genshin Impact,
take anywhere from several hours to a few days, depending on the object being created and the type of printer being used. The advantages of 3D printing over making something by hand or through a traditional production method are vast. One of the more important is the ability to create objects with complex geometries that would otherwise just be difficult to produce at scale through other means. The technology is also very precise when it comes to material use. For example, imagine you need a star shape for an art project. Your first idea might be to cut out a piece of corkboard or whatever material you're working with and make it into a star shape. Obviously. But what happens to the excess material, the stuff left over after you cut out the star? Well, yeah, most of the time just throw it in the trash, don't you? Well, when it comes to 3D printing, the printer can simply make a star shape with little to no excess material loss. As the technology advances, it may help cut down on labor, maintenance, and material costs, even outside of generally reducing waste. All of this would be huge for any industry, but especially housing construction, which is a labor-intensive, high-waste business. If 3D printed housing construction were to take off, it could not only theoretically address the supply issue, but also lower the cost of building a house in general, essentially addressing the price issue at both ends of the equation. Beyond the basics we already discussed, however, 3D printed construction projects face some additional challenges. When using 3D printers for construction, the materials are typically concrete, cement, wax, foam, and polymers, which can be produced both off-site and on, depending on the company and the printers involved in the project. Still, that is just for the bare structure of the house. It does not include things like wiring up electricity or any other finishing touches necessary. A basement or foundation structure will also usually have to still be assembled, at least in part, on site. Still, the printing process itself can be quick. Chinese company Winsun claimed to be able
strategic significance probably exceeds its operational value.
I see. So the way to do it is to fill this with water from here. Which is easy enough to do. Oh no, from here.
To print 10 houses in 24 hours, with each costing around $5,000 each before windows, doors, and other important features have been installed. Now, this claim was later disputed, but other companies have also claimed to be able to print the base structure for a house in roughly a day, though depending on the material, it may require more time to dry. Clay-printed houses, for example, may take weeks to fully dry out. Put this all together, and the overall picture is that while 3D printed housing is faster and cheaper than traditional methods, it's not yet as fast and as cheap as you might expect. And all of this excludes the initial startup costs of buying a printer capable of pumping out housing components in the first place. There are also still some tricky technical issues. Solid concrete, the primary material used in 3D printed housing construction, is a terrible insulator with basically zero resistance to heat flow. Worse still, concrete acts as a heat bridge, bleeding out heat during harsh winters and even drawing in more solar energy during the height of summer. The technical details are a little bit complicated, but there's essentially no way for concrete alone to reach the levels of heat insulation needed to satisfy modern building codes. There are solutions. For example, you can print a hollow shell of concrete as the strong, sturdy part of the wall and then fill it with insulation to make sure you reach the heat flow resistance necessary to meet codes. Other methods, like printing the insulation concurrently with the concrete, are still in their infancy and are not yet fully developed. So this is another bit of extra time and expense necessary to facilitate the construction of 3D printed houses. There are also concerns about environmental impacts, since standard concrete has a high carbon footprint and cement production already accounts for about 8% of all global CO2 emissions. With environmental regulations in place to slow down or mitigate climate change, and a large block of people deeply concerned about the environment, a high CO2 material used in a developing technology that has yet to mature is just a target for regulation. While some printer methods claim to be lower in carbon than others, there isn't much independent verification of these claims as of yet. Still.
Please give me what I want. What I really, really want. No. That's not what I want. What I really, really want. Let's try random. What? What was that? It was dumb. Let's try this one. Yes, it is the correct one. One of the correct ones. Let's see how fast. No. Red bits. Okay, that's at least something. Bobo.
If these were the only problems facing the industry, we would probably already be seeing entire 3D printer communities popping up all over the world, hailed as the magic bullet capable of solving the housing crisis. But there are two things worse than delays and higher than expected costs keeping the industry from rapid expansion: cracks and bureaucracy. So in November of 2024, the town of Muscatine in Iowa decided to tear down a 3D printed home. Why? Well, it had failed to meet structural benchmarks, which is a fancy way of saying that the concrete used in the home's construction was cracking. Rob Monahan, Housing Initiative Manager of the Community Foundation of Greater Muscatine, which is overseeing the project, spoke to Forbes saying, quote, "We had vertical cracking and some horizontal cracking, which was less of a concern, and we knew we had issues," end quote, referring to the strength of the concrete. Construction began in May, and even just a few months later, the problems were already becoming apparent. The material wasn't hitting their benchmarks for structural soundness, and they had failed to even identify the reason for the cracks. Quoting, "We're still trying to sort out whether it was because of climate," end quote. Which is a reasonable guess, given that the heat index had reached 120 degrees over the summer and been coupled with high humidity. Zachary Mannheimer, founder of the subcontractor on the project, quoting him, "Frustration is probably not the word I would use. We learned so much from the process itself." According to Mannheimer, the walls were structurally sound, but the cracks were concerning enough to merit a teardown. Alquist, the company behind it, has since developed a new material that's stronger, less expensive, and carbon neutral, though that's little comfort to the town of Muscatine. The problem is that 3D printing is still a finicky process, especially at the housing scale. Small differences in heat or humidity can have drastic consequences for a structure as it's being printed or as it dries. So can small differences in the composition of the material being printed. At one early 3D printing project in Saudi Arabia, they kept the printing materials in air-conditioned containers to prevent any heat-related chemical reactions. Any changes to these variables could lead to cracks down the road, and it would be hard to tell which one was the cause. Now, of course, this means that without advancements in the composition of the material and its resistance to heat, humidity, and minor variations in makeup, the most reliable way to construct 3D printed houses will be in off-site facilities. This will naturally mean that building parts have to be transported to the construction site, which means, once again, the cost difference between 3D printing and traditional construction will narrow. And for Muscatine, a small town in Iowa, it means they'll be left behind, a casualty of an industry still finding its footing. Alquist relocated to Colorado under the guidance of its new CEO, Patrick Callahan. Of the project in Iowa, industry consultant Stephen Mansour said, quote, "I was hoping they would destroy it, the home, because in traditional construction, that's what you do. For the industry, it's not a black eye. The black eye would be if somebody lived in it," end quote. But while the cracks would be bad enough on their own, they are a technical issue that is solvable. After all, there are examples of 3D printed homes having been fully constructed without suffering these issues. Once we get enough experience with the technology and understand what causes the cracks,
don't ask where it's from, just take it. My role is to reward good work, and you're pretty good. A gift is but a gentle token of heartfelt sincerity. That's how the saying goes. But if someone's truly sincere, no gift will be fitting enough. Well, I just hope you'll like this one, Endman.
Here, it's yours. Thanks for keeping me on your mind. Huh? Being able to remember someone you care about is gift enough?
Here you are.
Really sorry.
I warned you before. Don't touch the pressure valve.
will be able to develop new systems, materials, in order to prevent them. So, a hit to productivity in the short term, and a major struggle for individual companies, but it's not a death blow to the field itself. Instead, it's regulatory hurdles that may be the true barrier to widespread adoption. Construction is understandably one of the most regulated industries in the world, and while 3D printed housing shows promise, it is at the end of the day a basically unproven method for housing development. Theoretically, houses made from cement should last for a century or more and be resistant to weather damage, insects like termites, fires, and other common household hazards than traditional homes, but we just don't know if the theory will stand the test of time. Unlike with traditional housing where we can simply point to a 150-year-old house and say, look, it's 150 years old. We obviously can't do that for 3D printed structures yet. We didn't have those in the 19th century. Less well-made 3D printed homes may show cracks within months, but it may also be the case that even the better-made ones will show signs of deterioration in 20 years, in 5 years, maybe in just 1 year. We just don't really know yet. And that has made regulators wary of approving 3D printed housing projects and has made the projects themselves vulnerable to regulatory changes from everything from safety advocates to environmentalists. And of course, a huge reason houses aren't getting built the traditional way in the first place, despite massive persistent demand, is a regulatory and local zoning framework that discourages housing projects in general. Having a new, cheap way to build houses doesn't actually offer a benefit if your local zoning board is rejecting all development plans regardless, but I mean, that's a whole other issue. Still, despite the challenges, some intrepid companies are trying to make the technology work, gambling that the technical hurdles to the printing process can be solved, while the cost-efficiency proposition of 3D printed houses will win hearts and minds of both regulatory and zoning boards. There's only one problem, though. The projects keep failing. Cairo is a small town in It's in Illinois, it's not in Egypt. In Egypt, it's a massive off city. It's one of the furthest south in the entire state, sitting closer to Kentucky and Missouri than to Chicago. With a population of less than 2,000 and one that has been declining in recent decades, Cairo seemed like exactly the kind of place where a 3D printing housing venture could thrive. While cities are also in dire need of housing, the problem there is more one of space and regulatory hurdles, not the availability of resources necessary to build in the first place. Cairo is the opposite. Lacking the resources for a thorough housing push and not particularly desirable as a place to move, building a neighborhood of 3D houses could make construction projects economically feasible, improve the lives of residents, and even attract new people to the shrinking town. Enter Prestige Project Management, which in late summer 2024 had finalized a deal with Cairo to build 30 duplexes. Only days later, crews had arrived and were ready to conduct the groundbreaking. The first duplex constructed was hailed as the first new house built in the small city in nearly 3 decades. Over 100 people had shown up for the groundbreaking ceremony. People cheered. Hope was in the air. This project was just the beginning, according to Mayor Thomas Stimson. State Senator Dale Fowler, whose district covered some of the most impoverished residents in all of Illinois, also hailed the beginning of the project as a step toward greater prosperity for residents. Fowler, in particular, had put his money where his mouth was, quite literally. His nonprofit had secured a $40,000 donation to pay for the groundbreaking event. Construction, or should we say printing, began in earnest, and within a month, the walls of the first duplex had gone up and interior work had begun. And then, the project suddenly stalled. The owners would later blame our old friend, cracks in the structure, for the delay, saying that they needed to verify the structural integrity of the unit. Prestige waited for over a year to be presented with a plan to deal with the cracks from the printer supplier, but none ever came. Time continued to pass, no one moved into the duplex, and the on-site printer was quietly moved elsewhere. That's around when reporters started asking questions. It was uncovered that Prestige, the company contracted to build the houses, had bizarrely forfeited a $590,000 deposit on a different printer when they suddenly cancelled their order. Perhaps even more ominously, several employees had quit Prestige right around the time of the groundbreaking. The exodus of workers happened to coincide with an anonymous email making the rounds that claimed Prestige's foray into 3D printing was little more than a publicity stunt and that the company had allegedly engaged in fraud during its other construction projects. It wasn't just reporters asking questions either. The FBI had gotten curious about Prestige's activities as well, launching an investigation into the company. To date, there haven't been any arrests, but it certainly isn't a good look for the company or its owners. Jamie Hayes and Eric Burtis founded Prestige in 2021. The offices were located in Harrisburg, another small town in Illinois, less than 100 miles away from Cairo, though with a population of 8,000 it was significantly larger. It was one of 7 companies that Hayes had started since 2020, 3 of which were co-founded with Burtis. With Hayes as the money man and Burtis in charge of day-to-day operations, the pair built up a varied set of businesses, going into school construction management, solar farm fencing, and of course, 3D printing duplexes for the small town of Cairo. After getting advice from his son Josh about what was hot in construction, Burtis decided to go into 3D printing in 2023. Once Burtis had zeroed in on Cairo, an area in desperate need of development, as the starting point for the new printing venture, he said that God had encouraged him to donate the first home as a show of goodwill. Still, residents had been burned before by big promises and high hopes, only for it all to come crashing down. So, let's just say there were some skeptics. Connie Williams, a city council member, said, quote, "We kept saying to them, look, we've had enough people come through Cairo talking all this crazy stuff and then back out. And they were just like, no, 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 that's not us. We're here. God sent us." End quote. Despite the trail of broken promises scattered around Cairo, the project appeared credible enough to elite policymakers in Illinois. Governor J.B. Pritzker met with both Burtis and Dale Fowler, while staff of United States Senator Tammy Duckworth were invited to learn more about the project. Prestige's first printed home got a boost on social media when Susan Mendoza, the Illinois comptroller, praised the project in a post. But political support, or at least engagement, and a glitzy groundbreaking ceremony were distracting from deep problems within Prestige, which suggested that Cairo's latest attempt at revitalization was on shaky ground even before construction crews began building the very first duplex. To begin with, Prestige had secured a $1.1 million loan in order to purchase a printer in the first place, a loan so large that it required a rural lender in Karnak, Illinois, to partner with another bank to get around its single customer lending limit. Once the loan was approved, Prestige put down a $590,000 payment on a printer which would be built by Perry 3D Construction in Texas. Their contract stated that the printer would be delivered in 6 months at the earliest. Despite being aware of the uncertainty around the delivery of the printer, Hayes and Burtis began to grow impatient. They had given Cairo their word that they would begin construction in the spring, and the delivery schedule threatened that promise. While at a concrete industry expo, Burtis met a team from a New Jersey-based 3D printer production company who said they had printers available for immediate delivery. Burtis and Hayes quickly pivoted to the new company, informing Perry 3D that they would no longer need their services and suggesting they keep $60,000 of the original payment. Perry, of course, did no such thing and kept the entire deposit, exactly like any company would in that situation. It is a deposit, after all. This was in April, right before their printer would have been due. Prestige had essentially lit more than $500,000 on fire. Fortunately, the New Jersey company was willing to sell them a printer for the $500,000 that they had left. Speaking about the debacle, Hayes had this to say: "If I get 10 grand for a car, say I pay 5 grand for a car and I don't get my money back, but I can buy another car that does the exact same thing and I only pay another 5,000, what do I give a shit if I can get back and forth to work?" Now, of course, this meant that their promise to start construction in the spring went from iffy to impossible, since even this new company wouldn't be able to deliver the printer until August. Keep in mind that all of this, the loan, the multiple printers, the delays, it was all to build just a single duplex. Theoretically, once the upfront costs of buying and delivering a printer were taken care of, the advantages of faster construction time and cheaper materials would begin to pay dividends. But this initial stage was essentially a proof of concept as opposed to a magical solution to Cairo's housing issues, and they were struggling even with that. This didn't go unnoticed by town leaders. When asked where the company would be getting the funding to build the remaining 30 or so homes that had been agreed upon, Prestige was evasive, not giving a straight answer. For a project like this, one possible solution would have to be to apply for housing tax credits. These applications can take years to wind their way through the system, and would have been challenging for Prestige to get approval for, given that they were essentially trialing a new technology in a rural community. I'm looking at putting solar panels on the roof of a building, and believe me, the process, even for that, is crazy. But it's notable that they didn't even seem to try. There's no record of Prestige ever having applied for one of these programs. Eventually, Burtis told Cairo officials that they themselves would need to come up with the funds for future construction. But of course, if Cairo had that kind of money in the first place, they would have already built the housing they needed. The town and Prestige were able to reach an agreement where Cairo would sell the printing company a vacant lot for $1. Prestige would build a duplex and manage it for 18 months, then transfer ownership back to the city. The contract called for an additional 29 duplexes to be built, but did not detail how they would be financed. In 2025, a reporter began to pick up the thread of the Cairo 3D printed housing project story and sought to get in contact with Hayes, the money man behind Prestige. One of the first things she asked for was to see the printer itself, which Hayes agreed to, casually revealing that the printer, which would be the size of a small garage if fully assembled, was stored on Hayes' personal backlot. But as they toured the lot, passing rows of cars, it became clear that the printer was nowhere to be found, though Hayes didn't seem particularly upset about that fact. "I don't see it. Do you?" he said with a shrug. It had apparently been there at one point, but had since been moved to places unknown. That bizarre moment would begin to paint the picture of Hayes and Prestige, which he revealed had been named after the do-nothing company from the comedy movie Step Brothers. Hayes claimed to have sued Perry 3D to recover that nearly $600,000 deposit that they'd lost, but couldn't provide any details. He could not even say where the supposed lawsuit had been filed. But it turns out that it had indeed been filed. Prestige alleged in their lawsuit that Perry 3D had had Prestige sign a mock document, not a real contract, and that the document they'd signed did not contain the language that forfeited the deposit. The lawsuit reached a conclusion right around the time Perry 3D was laying off its US-based staff. A judge did eventually rule in Prestige's favor because Perry chose not to respond to the suit, but instead had this to say: "I guess good luck trying to collect it." Hayes knew they were never going to collect their deposit back, but still seemed chipper at the result, saying in text, "Looks like we did sue, and won." Getting the money would have been quite helpful for Prestige because under their lending agreement, the company owes the bank around $13,000 a month, every month, for 10 years, which essentially works out to $400,000 worth of interest on the $1.1 million loan. Of course, since Prestige hadn't made any money from the Cairo project, it couldn't make those payments itself. Instead, Hayes was covering them from one of his other business accounts. But none of that was Hayes' fault, at least according to him. Perry 3D's tricky contract and his hands-off approach had burned him, but he still had every intention of fulfilling his obligation to Cairo. Don't believe him? Well, just ask State Senator Dale Fowler. He'd back them up. Quote, "Ask Dale Fowler if there's anything going wrong," Hayes said. Being pointed to as the political force behind Prestige was news to Dale Fowler, who downplayed his role in the project, casting himself as more of a fan on the sideline cheering on. His description of his relationship with Hayes and Burtis painted a picture of cordiality, but not true friendship. That's an interesting characterization because Dale Fowler had actually done quite a lot to move the 3D project forward. For example, Fowler's office had emailed Prestige promotional materials to the Illinois Housing Development Agency and had also brought up the project to the State Poverty Commission not long after the loan for the printer had been secured. It was Fowler himself who had led State Comptroller Mendoza on a tour that included Burtis and his son. And it was Fowler who had facilitated a meeting between Senator Duckworth's office and the management team of Prestige. Cairo residents themselves certainly associated the state senator with the project. As the work began to hit snags and problems began to pile up, local leaders were reaching out to Fowler with questions. Quoting, "When it fell through, we were all calling Senator Fowler personally because he brought them here." That quote was from Williams, the council member. Altogether, this felt like quite a bit more than cheerleading from the sidelines, especially once you factor in the Prestige had essentially been Fowler's largest source of campaign contributions, excluding money coming in from political action committees. In total, Prestige donated around $22,000 to Dale Fowler from May of 2022 to August of 2024. The final $6,500 donation came less than a week before the groundbreaking ceremony for that first duplex. Despite claiming that the pair were merely his acquaintances, Fowler had apparently known Hayes and Burtis for decades. When pressed about the FBI investigation, he said he expected that they had done nothing wrong and that he'd taken unfair heat for his association with them. He compared himself to Daniel, the Old Testament hero, who was about to be torn to shreds by lions after being thrown into their den, but instead angels came down and closed their mouths, causing his enemies to be killed instead. Fowler's term expires in January, and he has declined to seek re-election. Maybe a smart move, allegedly. And now let's talk about that FBI investigation that we just casually dropped in there. As I've already mentioned, it wasn't just reporters who were investigating Prestige, the FBI were as well. Just a few weeks after the groundbreaking party, Prestige received a federal grand jury subpoena for its financial records, and the subpoenas kept on rolling from there. The FBI also obtained the work contracts and payment records sent to Prestige from 2 school districts in the city of Harrisburg, though this was for work unrelated to the 3D printed duplex project. John Peake, the mayor of Harrisburg, stated that the city had done 2 projects with Prestige and that Dale Fowler had encouraged them to do more. Meanwhile, one of the school districts that had been subpoenaed fired its superintendent as he had not gone through the proper channels to get approval for the $2 million spent on projects through Prestige and other companies. And remember how a number of Prestige employees had quit right around the time of the groundbreaking? Well, it turns out that at least one of them had turned informant. Bucky Miller, who had been hired in part to sell the development plan to Cairo officials, had become a whistleblower to the FBI. To hear Miller tell it, he had been taken advantage of, sold the dream of bringing fast, cheap, 3D printed houses to an impoverished area, only to have that dream shattered at every opportunity. Prestige never had any intention of completing the project, he claimed. A little while after the groundbreaking, there had been a flurry of emails from an anonymous account that went out to businesses and government entities that had contracted with Prestige, alleging that the company had committed fraud. At one point, Miller took credit for these anonymous emails, before later recanting and saying he hadn't sent them at all. Unsurprisingly, this turned into a he said situation, with Hayes and Burtis blaming Miller and Miller throwing it right back at them. In terms of the investigation, Burtis claimed to have been fully cooperative with the FBI, saying the company had turned over all records that had been requested. He also mentioned that he had never been interviewed by investigators. Quoting, "If I was really in trouble, don't you think I'd have been handed an indictment by now?" So, what happened to the duplex? Well, it's sitting abandoned. The printer has been idle for who knows how long, scattered in pieces throughout various properties owned by Hayes. The reason for this, Hayes claims, is that the concrete ink used in the printer is faulty and they're waiting on a replacement from Black Buffalo 3D, the New Jersey-based company that Hayes and Burtis had purchased their printer from after their initial attempt fell through. Black Buffalo has promised to replace the supposedly faulty concrete and even offered to find another buyer for the printer if Prestige no longer wanted it. The two companies also claimed they would work together to fix the cracks in the duplex, although they took care to insist that those cracks were largely cosmetic and not structural. They even sent a joint email claiming that they would soon return to Cairo to fix the cracks. But of course, this didn't happen. Black Buffalo said they couldn't sign off on work because they needed a permit from the city. This was essentially a nonsense excuse because permits are not required for the work being done. Black Buffalo has only sold 2 printers in the US since being founded in late 2020, and it has filed for bankruptcy. While crews were recently seen conducting work on the single duplex that had been sort of constructed, many people in Cairo felt left behind and forgotten. That's not new to them. Many development initiatives have come and gone without fulfilling their promises. But something was different this time. Cairo city attorney said, quoting, "I've seen a lot of deals fall through, but we always knew why. Here, we got nothing. Even today, I probably have a lot more questions than I've got answers." End quote. After years of attempting to reverse population decline and address a housing crisis, all Cairo has to show for it is a single duplex sitting empty. Kanisha Mallory, who had hoped to move into either that duplex or one of the others that was supposed to be built, was left waiting for a home that would simply never come. So, real talk. Are Jamie Hayes and Eric Burtis a pair of remorseless scammers who took advantage of a town in desperate need to conduct some sort of fraud scheme? Well, no, probably not. While there are questions about their business practices, there have been no criminal indictments by the FBI, and reporters haven't uncovered a smoking gun of illegal activity. That's not to say that Prestige hasn't broken the law or won't be indicted, but I attribute the situation more to ineptitude than criminal malice, at least with the information we have right now. But it's clear that the pair didn't fully think through the logistics of launching a 3D printed construction business and proceeded to make that Cairo's problem. The technology is new and exciting and developing quickly. That can be attractive to entrepreneurs who think that if they can get in before 3D printing has quite gone mainstream, they can make a huge profit once the industry explodes in popularity. That leads to cases like Cairo and Muscatine in Iowa. These are towns that really could benefit from cheaply produced housing. The upsides are there. But because the companies involved either didn't think through or weren't aware of the challenges of 3D printing, these towns have been left out to dry. And that's a shame, because there have been success stories. A 2-story 3D printed home was completed in Japan earlier last year. Japan, known for its frequent and powerful earthquakes, has strict safety standards when it comes to residences. All homes, and all buildings in general, must be made sufficiently earthquake-resistant to be used. The house, which apparently borrowed design principles from naturally occurring caves, managed to get approval from Japan's regulators, which are some of the strictest in the world, although I'm not sure I fancy living in a cave. Quoting, "Japan has some of the most demanding seismic requirements in the world. Seeing a government-approved 2-story 3D printed reinforced concrete house completed here confirms that 3D construction printing is ready for projects that rely on structural precision and consistent quality, also in seismic areas." That quote's from Henrik Lund Nielsen, the founder and general manager of Cobot International, a leading 3D printer production company. The fact that the house has 2 stories was also a huge leap forward in the technology, since previous homes had traditionally been restricted to a single story like the duplex in Cairo. The ability to build homes of 2 or possibly even more stories really opens up the potential of the technology, making it possible to fit more people within a single building, or even just making the houses more appealing to families looking for a new home. While high-profile failures like the Cairo project have soured people's tastes towards 3D printed ventures, the technology still does hold a lot of promise. It could address our housing supply crisis. It has the potential to lower CO2 emissions if deployed thoughtfully. It could also lead to a boom in construction, not just of houses, but of any type of structure. Houses built this way will likely last for 100 years and be far more durable, mold-resistant and insect-resistant than traditional wooden housing. The technology's here, the demand is here, we just have to decide we want to build it and properly think through the logistics of doing so. Thank you for watching.
1 hour.
It's about time we threw another tea party, don't you think? I wonder who else is. I like music. In fact, I've taught myself to play many different instruments. You don't believe me? Find me a piano, and I'll show you a thing or two. This realm. If you ever It's about time we threw another tea party, don't you think? I wonder who else is free. I like music. In fact, I've taught myself to play many different instruments. You don't believe me? Find me a piano, and I'll show you a thing or two. It's about time we threw another tea party, don't you think? I wonder who else is myself to play many different instruments. You don't believe me? Find me a piano, and I'll show you a thing or two. It's about time we threw another tea party, don't you think? I wonder who else is. Take a break, pick up the pace.
Welcome to the... Thank you for completing... Welcome to...
Zeppel Yarny Palace again? Ugh, seriously. What's the point in all these endless meetings?
Okay, so tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be the day I am
Don't worry. This stage is mine. Channel. Sweet pipe. Step back. Let me handle this. Concentrate. Take this! Obliterate form and spirit. Scatter. Look out. You're now connected. Intersect. Seal. Break. Premiums. Your life ends here. Thanatos Storm. Allow me. Shift. Dial 1 for complaints. You spot an ethereal. Shout for help. Bring on the fireworks. Faithful companions. Heed my call. Slumber in the mist. The weak spot is here. A complaint? Too late for that. Breathe. Dust. Swift yet still. As decreed. I'll back you up. Evil shall return to dust. Yin and yang converge. Forward! Turn around! Pretty, right? Smash them! Strength and finesse. Thanatos Storm! Reality and illusion. Don't get careless. Wanna play a game? Your life ends here. Intersect! Seal! Break! Careful. Sorry for the wait, dear. Dial 1 for complaints. Premiums. The weak spot is here.
Oh, it already doesn't matter.
Slumber in the mist. Insignificant rabble. The verdict is unforgivable. Drawn from countless legends, melodies, and dreams.
An opening. Channel. Obliterate form and spirit. Release.
Forward! Turn around! Smash them! Intercept! What? Seal!
Strength and finesse. It's all clarity and inference. Reality and illusion. An opportunity.
Big talker! Huh? I'll back you up.
Evil shall return to dust. Shift. Your life ends here.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that's enough either.
Hello? This is the end for you! Reaper Shockwave!
Allow me. Focus.
It's gonna be alright. Just a couple more runs.
The wind rises. Hit him where it hurts. Hit him where it hurts. I'll make it painless.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is an anime known for many different things.
Здравствуй, подвал Глеба. На твоем экране зритель, на вашем экране зрители, персонаж Цукисиро Янаги, который до какого-то определенного момента считалась крайне классным, универсальным и сильным электрическим аномалистом. В целом, я могу сказать, что до сих пор, ну, такая вот сборка у меня на Янаге, если что кому интересно, до сих пор, ну, я не могу назвать ее прям говном, ну, не могу, но при этом она находится в таком очень подвешенном состоянии, у нее нету бисаков, она редко где используется, она не особо вообще сочетается с кем-то из новых персонажей. Вот давайте мы посмотрим. Ну вот с кем она играет из новых? С Велиной она говно, здесь ни с кем не играет. С Ромелой там непонятно, что будет, но если там с Велиной стоит, это тоже какой-то кал непонятный абсолютно. И, в общем-то, в чем заключается, да, прикол? Прикол заключается в том, что Янаги вместе с Джуюань и вместе с Цезарь отправляется в лузпул 50/50. Это означает, что вы сможете выбрать Цукисиро Янаги как персонажа, на которого вы сможете проиграть свои крутки. Она приравнивается таким образом теперь к стандартному герою, по сути, хотя не совсем, но по сути как бы да. И если учесть, что нынешний power level стандартного героя выше, чем power level Янаги, ей еще и баф нужен, чтобы она была действительно супер крутой. Ну, то есть, она не просто уходит в лузпул, это не говоря уже про Джу. Джу там вообще пиздец. Джу именно, ну хотя хз. Вот опять же, смотрите, в чем прикол. Условная стандарт чар. Давайте так, мы приравниваем Янаги, Цезарь и Джу к стандартным героям. Дело в том, что таким образом у нас начнут герои обрастать так или иначе каким-то количеством ментальной картины, эйдосов. И вот ты, когда получаешь менталку, да, и доходишь, допустим, там вот, когда Янаги наносит другой урон аномалии атрибута, враг входит в состояние взгляд насквозь. Процент пробивания атак по врагам с эффектом повышается на 16%, да, какой-то вот такой вот бонус. Левел кнопки, который увеличивает там урон полярки, безусловно. 6-й эйдос, после того, как Янаги выполняет колющий удар, какое-то состояние входит, в это состояние урон усиленной особой атаки повышено на 20. И это все к чему? Мы рассматриваем стандарт героев сильными на высоком наложении ментальной картины. Таким образом, и Янаги приходит к тому же. Ей нужен просто баф, чтобы у нее был потенциал какой-то и более актуализированной механики. И тогда она пойдет вот туда же. Вместе с Грейс, со всеми она будет ебашиться с констами, и вот на каких-то дорогих пачках она будет играть. Хорошо ли то, что у нас расширяется лузпул? Это неизбежный процесс. Старых героев либо тотально реворкать, но никому это не надо, да? Либо вот таким вот образом списывать их со счетов, оставляя как бы где-то на фоне вместе с другими стандартами, и такими списанными героями на данный момент оказались именно Янаги, Цезарь и Джу. И на примере Янаги я просто рассказал ситуацию, которая, то есть то, что я сказал про Янаги, плюс-минус актуально и для Джу, и для Цезаря. Но просто Джу на самом деле еще более слабая, чем Янаги. Янаги так-то, говорю, Янаги неплохой герой, да? И вот Марк в чате правильно заметил, если мы сравним М2 Янаги и М2 Грейс, то ну ёпты, М2 Янаги будет сильнее. М2 Янаги сильная. Но при этом, что Грейс, что Янаги в лузпуле. Сигнальник, кстати. Что на самом деле довольно забавный, прикольный факт. Сразу скажу, что добавление их в лузпул, помимо того, что там, если вам нравится герой, вы сможете получить консты, им все равно нужно ждать свои бафы. То есть теперь вот у нас раньше из стандартных героев без бафа оставалась только Коляда, теперь мы также должны ждать бафы и для этих персонажей. Кого из них выгодно поставить в лузпул и почему? Сразу давайте начнем вот с чего. Я бы даже сейчас не советовал ставить Джу в лузпул. Она очень сильно просела. Условный набор конст на солдат 11 или на Камату новую, да, там что-то такое. Выглядит лучше. В целом, ну просто вот у вас есть Пироис. Я не знаю, на какой консте без бафа Джу, блядь, будет сильнее Пироиса. Только после бафа можно вот это обсуждать. Короче, добавление Джу в лузпул никак ваш лузпул не меняет. Я бы не рекомендовал ее ставить, только если у вас больше нечего ставить туда. Потому что с какой стороны, смотри, что она, что ее пушка, они вам не нужны на аккаунте сейчас. Поэтому здесь как бы, я бы рекомендовал ждать бафа, ждать изменения какой-то меты, не меты, пачек. Ну, Джу нужно просто реворкать. И вот если ее реворк какой-нибудь в будущем окажется достойным, можно вот поговорить о том, чтобы там поставить ее в луспул вместо какого-то героя, который у вас уже собрался, или которым вы не хотите играть, или которого у вас нет и вам он не нужен, и т.д. Конечно, по вайфу фактору вы ставите. Далее. Цезарь. Здесь ситуация интереснее. Несмотря на то, что Цезарь считается, ну, очень таким, скажем так, не самым эффективным героем, прям, я бы сказал, очень неактуальным. Дело в том, что у нее есть ряд именно поломанных механик, которые вот буквально, блядь, мешают герою хотя бы адекватно работать. Вот, к примеру, вот она дает свой щит, который дает 1000 атаки. Проблема в том, что когда ты свапаешься с активного героя, то есть щит дает 1000 атаки только на активном персонаже. Как только ты свапаешься с активного персонажа, баф спадает. Из-за этого ты не можешь нормальные ротации со скипами проводить. Ты не можешь нажать цепочку Эвелин и свапнуться на другого героя, потому что она потеряет атаку. Ты не можешь там нажать любую кнопку, которую ты хочешь свап-кэнселом отменить, чтобы не потерять атаку. Но это полная параша. И это один из самых основных реворков. Цезарь должна давать, ну, хотя бы атаку еще на 5 секунд после... Ну, хотя бы 3 секунды после свапа. Не говоря уже о том, что, ну, хотелось бы, чтобы она и всей команде атаку давала. Ну ладно, это такой механический минус. Тем не менее, в отличие от Джу, я бы даже сказал, что, ну вот, смотрите, во-первых, у нее крайне универсальная сигна. Эта пушка реально прикольная. Она тебе и импульс дает, она и классный этот универсальный бонус дает. То есть как пушка стандарт баннера в луспул, это отличный вариант. Вот Цезарь это тот герой, которого вот у нас, если что, нету персонажа обороны в стандарт баннере. Это первый будет персонаж обороны в стандартном луспуле, и она подходит под стандарт. Просто, anyway, ей нужно актуализировать механики. Далее, в отличие от той же Джу, которая дамагер, у которой есть буквально замена в виде Пиройса, которая просто, ну, никоим образом без бафа людям не нужна, по ощущениям, кроме фактора. Цезарь, ну, хотя бы саппорт какой-то, она хотя бы что-то дает. Она пивная, то есть ты можешь дать этот щит, там тебе будет проще проходить какие-то этапы, там, не знаю, башню, не башню. Она дает какой-то бонус, дает аффиксы, дает атаку, она носит какой-то полезный сет, там, не знаю, если есть пушка, она носит эту пушку. И вот прям совсем... ну она еще и станет неплохо. Совсем говном ее не назвать. Она что-то делает. И вот в луспуле в начале, если ее выбить там вместо той же Коляды, ну, по моему мнению, она полезнее Коляды будет. Да, Коляда супер быстро станет, но Коляде нужен тоже очень сильно баф. А здесь хотя бы, ну, побольше всего. И как для новичка, ну, хотя бы что-то. Понимаете, это не делает ее пиздатым героем. Это просто хотя бы что-то. И вот если ее бафнуть, переработать, то это будет реально достойный герой стандартного баннера. Особенно с учетом того, что у нее вполне неплохие эйдосы. У нее срез резистов. 15% ко всем атрибутам. Такая стандартная саппорт-конста, очень неплохая. Автоматический щит, как удобство. То есть, ну, на халяву получить, ну как на халяву? Ну просто получить ее, дальше, М2. Здесь у нас получается генерация энергии и бонус к силе атаки. Я так понимаю, там какой-то батл, не батл АТК или как это? Просто больше атаки будет. Ну, вторая слабая, но опять же, вот для уровня стандартки типа пойдет. Первая хорошая, вторая послабее, но окей, тоже что-то. Четвертая. Кстати, я не знаю, что четвертая делает. Четвертая — это уникальная механика. Я не знаю, как она работает. Звучит интересно, но ничего такого вроде. Шестая. Блять, клянусь, это консты стандартного героя, бля. Вот просто я сейчас почитал их. Это просто консты Коляды какие-то. Это просто ей урон насыпает. Короче, это просто стандарт. Понимаете, разраб просто их изначально сделал так. Они просто равны стандартам. Это жесть. Ну, конечно, Янаги сильнее всех выделяется. Даже при том, что у нее тоже не самые сильные консты, она все равно, ну, номинально сильнее вот этих двоих. Ну, короче, если Цезарь нормально реворкнуть, она может быть вполне неплохим персонажем обороны стандартного баннера. Джу можно хорошенько бафнуть, чтобы она хотя бы на констах, типа у вас там потом работала как солдатка М6 какая-нибудь или Накамата. Они, кстати, не слабые. Грейс М6 не слабая. Ну и получается сама Янаги, про которую я уже сказал, да, она выглядит лучше всех. У нее прям, ну она сильная, она реально сильная. У нее еще классная сигна, потому что помимо того, что эта сигна на Янаге хорошо встает, ее еще любят ставить на всяких там Пайпер и не только. Это хорошая, кстати, сигна. Она довольно универсальная, это хорошая пушка. Итого, я бы сейчас не рекомендовал менять в вашем луспуле кого-то на Джу и ее пушку. Цезарь можно поставить в луспул, у нее неплохая универсальная сигна, более-менее рабочие механики. Она мне импонирует в стандартном баннере сейчас больше, чем Коляда. Но это, наверное, единственное, с кем она может конкурировать, только с Колядой. То есть, условный Ликаон, Рина после бафа, Янаги, там, Накамата. Ну, опять же, то есть, можно сказать, что вот Накамата, да, Солдат 11, нахуя они нужны, там, или Грей, Грейс. Вот, допустим, вместо Грейс мы ставим, допустим, Янаги, к примеру. Ну, просто вопрос к наличию в стандарт-пуле дамагеров, он всегда под сомнением. Но, в отличие от той же Джу, констовая солдатка или Грейс, или Накамата, а Джу, я хз. Я не особо знаю, насколько она сейчас сильна на М6, но, тем не менее, тоже можно вспомнить, что у Лика... Ну, опять же, я бы не сказал, что у Ликаона говно консты, потому что у него есть как минимум 3-я и 5-я, которые нихуя на Дейз бустит ему. А Ликаон сам по себе один, ну, наверное, после бафа Рины они вдвоем, вот, топ-1 герой стандартного баннера. Рина и Ликаон вот вдвоем просто. И, типа, дать Ликаону больше Дейза, это довольно-таки приятная тема, как по мне. Ее можно поставить вместо кого-то, и тут опять же, вот, к примеру, у вас есть, не знаю, есть Цезарь или даже нет, но у вас, например, Накамата, там, М0, и вы не хотите играть, у вас там, у вас Шунь, нахуй вам Накамата, можно поставить Цезарь, потому что просто сапик какой-то, в надежде на баф. Потому что если бафнут, иметь первые 2 консты удобно. При этом, если вам не нужна, например, ДД Цезарь, вы можете после 2 конст Цезарь убрать ее и вернуть другого героя. То есть ей бы в луспуле находиться до 2 конст, потому что если ее бафнут, она станет более-менее каким-то играбельным героем на 2 ваших констах, потому что все остальные говно. Ну и, собственно, Янаги.
Just look at this for a moment. It looks absolutely spectacular, right? What type of game does it belong to? Well, it's a sci-fi gunship, and you're policing a dystopian city from the air. The exact type of game that disappeared around 25 years ago. The last great one was, of course, G-Plays. And looking at this, you might feel that it doesn't exactly look dead, does it? Well, that's because what we've got here is a small German studio, a team that's been making games since 1991 actually, decided to bring the genre back. This game then is called G-Rebels, and it's a spiritual successor to the one I mentioned just a moment ago. It's out now, it's an early access, and it's got one of the best flight models you're likely to play in this type of game. Now here you see me flying over the city called Davos, and it's at the centre of a flooded Earth future where humanity lives in vast floating megacities fighting over what's left. Now this is generally one of my favourite things.
Alert Legal Eagles! My law firm, the Eagle Team, is suing Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, and other social media platforms for social media addiction. So stick around until the end of this video to...
When I went to college from 2015 to 2019...
Good morning, Hank. It's Tuesday. So in his essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, Albert Camus argues that the meaning of life is the most urgent of questions. And I tend to agree. Which ideas we...
Hey everyone, it's Peck here. Arcane has just become the best character in the whole Arknight Tenfield game. Not only are her DPS teams the highest damage compositions in the entire game, but as a support she also massively improves both Yvonne and Last Bite teams. And best of all, she's actually very easy to play. In this video I will show you her perfect rotation step by step so you can copy them and deal absurd amounts of damage. First we will cover her best DPS team, and then I'll show you how to play her as a support in one of Yvonne's teams. And by the way, I'm intentionally using pretty bad gear in the showcase because with my actual build I would kill the boss before finishing the rotation. But first, wouldn't it be incredible if you could actually learn these rotations while you're playing? Well, thanks to Opera GX you actually can, because it has a built-in video pop-out feature that lets you keep videos from YouTube and many other platforms into a floating window.
Firefox also has it.
A few years ago, I had the idea to make a new series of YouTube videos where I would discuss logical fallacies, and I made one about ad hominem, and then I realized I hated it and I never wanted to do that again. It wasn't fun to make, and I didn't want to encourage debate perverts who think that yelling logical fallacies automatically wins arguments, or that it's necessary or even worth it to win arguments in everyday life. But here I am, all these years later, inspired to make another logical fallacy video, and it's all thanks to an absolute metric shit ton of people who rushed to my video about leftists supporting Graham Plattner to tell me that I was wrong because the people mentioned in my video were not, in fact, leftists. Sam Cedar and Emma Vigeland of Majority Report, Kyle Kolinsky of Secular Talk, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, Mehdi Hassan of Zeteo, and Ryan Grimm of Breaking Points are apparently all libs at best. QED. This is essentially an appeal to purity, or more commonly known as the no true Scotsman fallacy, thanks to philosopher Anthony Flew, who described an argument in which someone asserts that no Scotsman put sugar on their porridge. When their opponent says, well, I'm a Scotsman and I put sugar on my porridge, the response is, then you aren't a true Scotsman. No true Scotsman put sugar in their porridge. This is not a formal logical fallacy in which an argument is invalid because of its faulty structure. It's an informal fallacy because the problem lies in the premise itself.
Hello everyone. So as some of you are aware, I recently had retina reattachment surgery, and let me tell you, that's fucked me up a little bit more than I thought it would. I wanted to do like a long video about this situation, what it's been, and what it's kind of meant for my life going forward. But the truth is, I think maybe I'm just still a little bit too messed up. I have to lie down all day on my side for the surgery to take, and I can only get up for 10 minutes every hour, and my eyesight is too sore to look at things, so it's been a real challenge. It is unfortunately going to mean a little delay to the current main channel video, and unfortunately it's also meant that there's just some stuff in my life that I'm kind of going to have to let go of. But rather than try and force a coherent explanation out of myself right now, I'm going to play a segment from the recent stream where I explain everything. There's a few more videos lined up on this channel that are me recording this before the stream, So if you notice in the next regular Eye Patch Wolf video that I miraculously recover from this, I have not. But I'm okay, and I'm recovering fine, and I'm really looking forward to being back in a space where I can create things from a healthy place. Okay, guys, love you all. Please enjoy whatever this is. So, guys, I have a semi-final update on the eye patch situation that has dominated these streams for the last couple of months. There is some good news and there is some bad news, and so I'm just gonna kind of go through it. So basically, I went to see a surgeon on Monday. Basically what he told me and confirmed with me is that I have a semi-detached retina. That's what's been happening with my eye, and that's why like I haven't been able to see out of my left eye, and that's why my eye has been so kind of fucked up from whenever like I get kind of light shining in it. So like last week I did the stream with Rebecca. I didn't wear my eye patch because I wanted to be able to like see her as we were streaming, and it took my eye probably about 2 days to get like proper sight back in it. So this Wednesday I'm going in for surgery, and I'm going to be getting my like retina kind of reattached or fixed or whatever. This is not a super simple surgery. It's pretty intensive, and it looks like that there's going to be a about a 2 to 3 week recovery time. And
alright, so we just got hella news information today on Zenless 3.1, and let me tell you guys, there is so much, and I mean so much to go over. You guys can see that we're on stream. Everybody say what's up in the chat. But today we're going to be talking about the pool values of every character that you could potentially get within 3.1, whether it be the free pools we're going to get for them, the guaranteed pools, and we're even going to discuss some of the spending event characters, but we're not going to say too much on them because I know you guys, we want to spend as little money as possible during anniversary. And so we actually created some tier lists to actually make this a lot easier to give you guys a better idea on who is worth spending for, and the stream helped me conduct these lists pretty easily. So the first list we're gonna be talking about not only the character.
Okay, there was some of my last Wonderland. I guess it's in Zenless. The 3.0 stuff. Alright. That's going to be it for the stream. Good luck, fun, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.